Welcome to the Strong and Healthy After 40 podcast. We're discussing topics and practical strategies women over 40 can use to optimize their fitness, hormones, and metabolism. I'm Dr. Sara Whatley, a family medicine physician with an integrative approach to whole person care.
And I'm John Agbelusi, your strength coach with over 25 years as a certified fitness professional helping women over 40. So today we're talking about muscle, which is the most important organ for women over 40.
And what do women usually say when they hear the word muscle?
Yeah, I hear this a lot. So they think that muscle is going to affect the way they look somehow, and understandably, a lot of women feel that muscle is going to make them look big or bulky or really change their appearance. But a lot of times it's hard to understand how important it is for overall health and, how it plays such an important part of our whole entire life. And, one of the big factors that women are really facing when they get into their 40s that is affecting their metabolism negatively is that they're losing that most important organ. They're losing their muscle. And they've probably, if they haven't been strength training consistently over their life, they've probably been losing muscle for a while.
And the secret is that the muscle is actually one of our key factors in a healthy metabolism. And to your point, whether we were strength training in our 20s or 30s in a time when we could build muscle, regardless of that, in our 40s, women are losing muscle. Yeah. This is just men and women, but women in particular are also going through hormone shifts. Mm-hmm. And so as those hormones are declining, that affects how muscle is broken down and how it's built. Yeah. And then the side effect that we see from that is that it's now affecting blood sugars, our weight, and our bones.
Yeah. So tell us just a little bit more about that from the clinical side. You mentioned them, but just kind of tell us a little bit more in depth about, how muscle is so important for overall metabolic health on the, clinical level.
So muscle is everywhere. It's in our whole body, and it's one of our biggest organs if we're just talking pound to pound, right? So we don't ever want to sleep on muscle. But why it's so important metabolically, like at the cellular level, isn't just about how we look or what's hanging off of our bones. The muscle actually has receptors for glucose, so for sugar. So this is a way of regulating our blood sugar. Yeah. And so if we are losing muscle, regardless of anything else has changed, even if our diet hasn't changed, our sugars are going to go up. Yeah. And where does that sugar go? It can become fat. Yeah. So the more muscle we have, the more that we are utilizing sugar in the best possible way.
Yeah, and I think that is really a key concept that maybe women aren't taught, and I don't think it's taught to most people, is understanding that as we get older, we see these shifts in our blood work, right? A lot of people see an increase in their sugars, in their blood sugars. They see an increase in their lipid levels, right? And a lot of people don't realize is that's because of a decline in their actual muscle tissue and how important that is to these other metabolic factors.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also store a little bit of sugar within our muscles. Mm-hmm. And so when we move a little bit, like get up and go or do a short activity, we're utilizing that sugar. And then if we have any extra that we've either eaten or we're breaking down fat for fuel, then that gets restored in the muscle. But if we're not moving, then that stored sugar just stays there. Mm-hmm. And then that can create inflammation just by itself. And then when we do eat, where does the rest of the sugar go? So it all goes round. And then for bone health, it's also literally from like a mechanical standpoint, if we're moving the muscle, then it's creating friction against the bone. So a callus. And so then we're building stronger bone. But if we're not moving the muscle, then we're not strengthening the bone either.
Yeah, and that's key too, is, when we talk about bone health, a lot of people don't realize that, as they start to maybe get some pain in their joints, it is directly from loss of muscle tissue over time. And that's why those things kind of go hand in hand. You see arthritis and even conditions like, osteoporosis or osteopenia, they track on the same lines as reduction in muscle tissue. So it's I think it's so important that people understand that these concepts of why muscle is that most important organ over 40, because it ties to so many other metabolic systems in our body.
And osteoporosis and osteopenia are weakening of the bone,
Mm-hmm.
right? So just for
Yes,
context,
excuse us,
yeah,
yes.
absolutely. And so we're getting weakness of the bones for different reasons, hormone shifts, nutrition, but in particular because of those muscles. And to your point, why they're getting more pain in their joints is that muscles should be doing the work. They should be carrying the load.
Yeah.
But if the muscles weaken, then we're asking our tendons and ligaments to do a job that isn't their job. Then that's when things can get tricky and we get wear and tear, and then we get injuries.
Yeah, and pain and discomfort and none of that stuff that we want, but that we see as we get into our 40s and 50s is people have more pain and less mobility and more discomfort in their joints, and a lot of that tracks with not having strong, healthy muscles. So yeah, really, really good, really important.
How do you help support your clients, or what are you recommending to them when you're seeing that? Okay, maybe a woman in her 40s or beyond is coming in and you can tell they already have some muscle loss, which we call sarcopenia. Or they are having more pain with certain movements that shouldn't cause pain. Like, how are you guiding them?
Yeah, really good point. And I think the key concept there is really helping them understand that the muscle is what protects their joints. It's what moves their body, and it's not. Muscle is not just about aesthetics. It's not just about how we look. It is about how our metabolism's functioning. So, it is that core concept of strength training. Really improving the health of the muscle cell is impossible without strength training. And so that's where it becomes such a key foundation. It is kind of that catalyst, that thing that starts that positive change in the muscle tissue, in the muscle cell, is that strength training. And then, progressive overload, right, is that kind of that concept where we want to be lifting heavier over time, progressively, making sure that we're not doing too much too soon. It's one of those concepts where it's like, hey, a lot of people think if I lift more right now, can I get faster results? And the answer is you can cause a lot more harm than good. And so really the key to, the strength training especially for women 40 plus, is it does need to be progressive. Like, we want to lift heavier, but over this long period of time, having this really good planned out program. And that's why it's really helpful to work with a fitness professional, is really say, hey, what's the plan for this month, and what's the plan for next month? Where am I going to be 6 months from now, so that I can really see how I'm getting stronger over time. And then understanding the correlation of how protein intake and strength training work hand in hand, and overall protein intake and your overall muscle mass is really important. And so this is where that concept of, we want the more muscle we have, the more protein we can actually synthesize and break down into repair and recovery. And so it's like this really important concept of, we want to increase your muscle tissue so that your body can have a better, more optimized chance to absorb and really utilize the protein that we're eating, which, as you talked about, has such a positive effect on lots of other metabolic systems.
And something that you check in your clients that I want to touch on is a body scan. And that ties into looking at data points that tell us a lot about the muscle mass, the water that's in your body, that's in your cells, that's in your bones. And so touch on that a little bit about how that's useful with your clients.
Yeah, data is key, right? And I think you and me, that's kind of a topic that we talk a lot about, because it's really hard to understand what positive effects you're having on your body unless you can really track the data. And so that's where having there's a couple gold standards in collecting data on muscle. One is like a DEXA scan, which a lot of people have heard about, which really does look at a lot of factors. Can look at the health of your bones, also the health of your muscles. That's really important data point. The easier one, the one that's a little easier in my setting, is it's called an in-body scan. It really looks at the health of your muscle, the volumization, the volume of the muscle cell, the density of the cell. Those things are really, really important, and really helps us understand, like, hey, is your body getting really the input that it needs to build more muscle? And that's where the data is really helpful, because we can say, hey, look, okay, your body, yes, it's getting everything that it needs to build more muscle. And as we can track that, we'll see, okay, now it maybe needs a little bit more strength training, and really utilizing the data to kind of to guide how much we should be working out, how much protein we should be eating, because the data will give us some insights on if we're hitting the markers or not. So yeah, collecting that data is key to success.
And that can be very helpful on the medical side as well. I know some offices might have similar scanners and some don't, but I find it useful in my practice for supporting the patients for those goals as well. If they have a difficulty getting to their goals or gaining muscle, then we can have a different perspective when we're looking at their labs, looking at their nutrition. Do we need to do some additional testing to look at the gut hormones, etc., or nutrient deficiencies to support building that muscle, because it is so important, and there can be so many layers, and you don't have to be a scientist to try to figure it out. Then you're going to work with the professionals to do that. There are some at-home scans too that I know a lot of people like these days, and I'm a big supporter of it. And we also have to have context for everything, right? So if you don't have access to an in-body, or someone doesn't have one, then there are different things you can get at home that are not too cost prohibitive. They're not always as detailed or specific or accurate, but it does give us a global understanding. Like, let's just get a baseline. Is what we're doing helping you with either weight loss goals, fat loss goals, or building muscle? And if the patient brings that data and I'm like, whoa, this is way off, then it's like, hey, we need to actually get one of those really detailed scans so that we can better understand. But we've talked about this before with wearables. I like data. You got to know where we are to know where we're going, and then you have a specific strategy to help implement. And so with muscle, I find those types of scans, especially the in-body, essential.
Yeah, 100%. Something I want to kind of go back to, I know you touched on it a little bit, but something that we can just do a little bit deeper dive with this episode is, you talked so much about blood sugar, inflammation, right? Having high levels of having elevated blood sugar can cause inflammation. Let's talk about, since we're talking about muscle specifically in this episode, let's do a little deeper dive. Like, why is muscle so important for blood sugar regulation?
So muscle cells actually have receptors for sugar on them. So they use sugar for energy. And by sugar, I'm saying glucose. Okay, so there's different, whenever we eat, anytime that we eat, we could eat a protein, a carb, a fat, it does not matter. It's going to be broken down into sugar, little building blocks. And the cells need that for energy. And so our muscle needs that for energy. And if we have all these muscle cells with all these receptors for sugar, then we're taking that in and we're using it. That doesn't mean that the more muscle we have, we can get away with eating whatever we want to, okay? But it does give us a little bit more metabolic flexibility, as we call it. And so that means that we can use that sugar the right way, and then we can store the appropriate amount later for energy. As we lose muscle mass as we age, for women, we are not only losing the muscle in the quantity, but it's also shrinking and getting smaller because we don't have the hormones, the anabolic hormones to build the muscle. So estrogen is what we call an anabolic hormone, meaning a building hormone, where men mostly have testosterone. Women also have that too, and both of those can decline as we age, and that affects our muscle quality, quantity, and then also the quality of our bones. So it's all tied together. Muscles get smaller, sugars are going to go up.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a really important point that I would love everybody to know is that, there is differences in quality of the muscle, and really good, strong, healthy muscle looks different than muscle that's unhealthy. You could have 2 pounds of muscle out of this 2 different people, even though they weigh the same. The healthier muscle is going to function much better. It's going to have a much more positive effect on their overall metabolic health and their overall movement, right? So it's not just about the quantity of the muscle that they have, it's about the quality. And so that's where aesthetically, we don't want to just think about the aesthetics of how it looks. We want to think of like how healthy is that muscle tissue. And yes, hormones are a big part of it. Strength training is what really does help improve the quality of the muscle tissue that we have. So even if we're not necessarily gaining muscle per se, if we can strength train and really just improve the overall quality of that muscle, it's going to function so much better.
Right. And you might hear this from some of your clients that they are just not able to lift as much, push as heavy, simple things. Maybe it doesn't sound simple, but jumping or running, or I'm not as fast anymore. And those may not feel as important to them. They might just say, oh, that's part of aging. I can't do that anymore. Not recognizing that that is actually an indicator of the quality of their muscle. It's not as strong. And so the type of strength training does matter. So when you're in the gym, it doesn't always mean you're going to bulk up, but it does matter if you're getting stronger. So that simple things, not just lifting heavy weights in the gym, but if you're able to lift your groceries, lift your kids and grandkids, get up off of the floor if you needed to. And these are the things that we want to make sure you stay strong. You don't even have to think about. What are some mistakes that some women make when they do start to strength train?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked so much about how important it is. So it's like every woman should start strength training, but caution is advised, right? We don't want to go all out. We talked a little bit about progressive overload and making sure that it is progressive over time. The number one mistake that really pulls people out of their strength routines is doing too much too soon. The nice thing about collecting data is we ideally want to do the minimal amount possible to create the greatest change, right? So, if we can get away with doing a little in the beginning that creates a big change, that's what we want, right? And then as we get stronger and we have more capacity and better recovery, that's when we start adding in more. So, it really does start off with kind of a foundation of a couple days a week of strength training. And then, at some point we'll probably hit where our body's not making as much progress off those 2 days. And then that's where we would want to add in like a third day. Or we could even add in just more volume, lifting more weights, having slightly longer sessions. Those are options as well. But that puts the progressive side in it, and that's being progressive is key. We don't start off at, 5 days a week of strength training when we're doing nothing. We start off at a couple days a week, lighter weights in the beginning, lifting heavier as we get stronger, and doing more as our body gets in better shape. So that's the number one thing is not doing too much too soon.
Again, working smarter, not harder. This seems to be a common theme. Yeah, small, simple steps. So what are some 3 foundational steps after learning, okay, muscle is the most important organ after your 40s? We understand why and how that's affecting us. Some strategies for going slow, starting where you're at. What are some 3 just simple strategies that women could implement today?
Yeah, let's keep them simple. So we've got to have that 3-step foundation. So one is strength training twice a week, right? So that should be the starting foundation for every woman. And then, obviously as they're getting stronger, they can progress that. Number 2 is eating enough protein. We've talked about that protein calculation of, for women over 40, a good just generic calculation is about a gram of protein per pound per day. A little bit less is okay too. And then the third is to make sure we're tracking data, right? So we've talked about how important data collection is. There's lots of ways to track data. You've talked about some of the home scans. There's also the medical side. We use a medical in-body scanner at our gym, at our facility. DEXA scans can be really helpful, but that tracking of the data. So strength training twice a week, getting enough protein, tracking the data. Those are the 3 steps that every woman should start taking to protect muscle and to build muscle, the most important organ in the body after 40.
Yeah. Simple, but foundational, very impactful when we're doing it consistently.
Yeah. So there you have it. Muscle, the most important organ for women over 40. So if our listeners want to learn more, how do they get a hold of your practice?
We will have information in the description below so that anyone can check out our social media or our websites and learn more about working with one of our teams if you're local, or just following us for other tips and health advice.
And if you want to learn more about what we do on the fitness side, you can click on our link in the description description below and book a consultation, or join our newsletter list where you can get a lot of tips and tricks on fitness and health for women over 40. And if there's topics that you would like to learn more about, you can post a comment in the section below.